Rule number 12 is one of the most famous rules. I'm sure that you've heard it before, and I want to first just say I'm sorry to the women here because they're not going to like the first line of his rule number 12, and that is, the devil, the enemy, acts like a woman in that he is weak in the presence of strength, but strong if he has his will. For it is, as it is in the nature of a woman in a quarrel with a man, to lose courage and take flight when the man makes a show of strength and determination. In like manner, if the man loses courage and begins to flee, the anger, vindictiveness, and rage of the woman become great beyond all bounds. In the same manner, it's the nature of our enemy, the devil, to become powerless, lose courage, and take flight as soon as a person who is following the spiritual life stands courageously against his temptations and does exactly the opposite to what he suggests. On the contrary, if a person begins to take flight and lose courage while fighting temptation, no wild beast on earth is more fierce than the enemy of our human nature as he pursues his evil intention with ever-increasing malice. So, Rule 12, it's a famous rule. The devil is like a woman, and the way to overcome it is to make a show of strength. You've heard it before. Don't let the devil get his foot in the door. You have to resist in the beginnings. Obsta in principiis is the Latin axiom, resist in the beginnings. You have to fight. You can't, if you start giving in to a temptation, what Rule 12 is explaining to you is that you're going to be overwhelmed. If you give in a little bit, you're going to cave in all the way. So you have to make a show of strength right at the start. If the devil's tempting you to go back to some sin that you have put behind you, you have to say, never. I will never return to it. I am not going to do that ever again. And you make these protestations of determination, and you make prayers like that. You say, please God, help me. I am never going to go back to that. I don't want that anymore. You have to fight back. So make that show of strength. I remember a story I might have told you before, but it fits this point so well. This man had just recently married, and he married a non-Catholic woman. And he, being a Catholic, could not eat meat on Friday. And so he told his new wife, he said, remember, it's Friday, I can't have meat today. And so he went off to work, and she purposely made meat. This is a true story. It's an absolutely true story. It was written by the woman. She purposely made meat. And she said because she thought it was ridiculous. She thought the Catholic Church's teachings on that was just ridiculous. And she felt like it's unimportant. I'm going to do what I want to do. And he comes home from work, and there she has like chicken or something. And he said, but I told you it was Friday. I can't have meat today. And she said, oh, I forgot. I'm sorry. And he said, okay, well, since you prepared it, I can have it. But just remember, next Friday I can't have any meat. So the next Friday comes, and he reminds her again. But she had purposely made meat again. And the same thing happened. He came home, and he saw whatever it was, a meatloaf or something. And he's more upset this time. And he says, but I told you, I can't have any meat on Friday. Oh, I forgot. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry. And then he eats the meat. He says, okay, but I'm not supposed to have meat on Friday. The next Friday, before he went to work, he was very, very much aware of it. And he said, now remember, this is Friday. Whatever you're planning for dinner tonight, don't have meat in it. Today's Friday. Catholics can't have meat on Friday. Remember. And so she goes, okay. He goes off to work. She purposely made a roast. She purposely did it. He comes home from work, and he never said a word to her. he went to the stove or the oven where the roast was, took it out, picked it up, and he threw it out the window. He threw the roast out the window. And very calmly he said to her, I told you, it's Friday, no meat. And she said, at that moment, I wanted to become Catholic. She said in her story, she said, because she realized Catholics are serious about this. This is something very, very important to them. And on that same line of, it's not about the rule now, I'm kind of getting off on a tangent here about meatless Fridays. Do you know that's still a law of the church? It's still in the new code of canon law. Though most Novus Ordo Catholics will say to you, oh, that's not a rule anymore. Yes, it is. Look it up. It is still a law of the church. The only difference now is that the new code says that the National Conference of Bishops can allow you to substitute something else in place of the Friday abstinence. If you don't abstain from meat on Friday, you can do a different penance. Well, you know what happened. Basically, the bishops said nothing, and so people stopped following, except they still follow it during Lent in the Novus Ordo Church. But the rest of the year, they don't observe it. But it's still a law. And the people more or less now think, oh, you don't have to do anything on Friday. Yes, you do. If you do not abstain from meat on Friday, you have to do another penance. It is required. It is in the code of canon law still to this day. But most people just neglect it. I know a young man who's Protestant, but he's very interested in the Catholic religion, and the whole concept of penance was something very, very striking to him, that the Catholic Church insisted we do penance. And so he decided he wanted to start observing Friday abstinence. And at his place of work, they have a cook that prepares the meals for the workers. And he went into the kitchen and he told the cook, it's Friday, I can't have meat today. Is there something else that you can make for me? And she said, yeah, I think I can come up with something. So anyway, she asked him a little bit later, she said, why did you not have meat? Are you a vegetarian, or is it for your health? And he said, no, I'm Catholic in my heart. And Catholics don't eat meat on Friday. Do you know that this woman went home and talked about this to her whole family? Because she came back to work and told this young man about this. That they started discussing at home the necessity of doing penance. And then other people too, she told, and there's a number of people now who are saying we have to do penance. And certainly some of them are fallen away Catholics who have forgotten that they had to observe the Friday abstinence. One more story that's kind of a neat story about Friday abstinence too, is there's this boy who his father wasn't Catholic. The family never kept the Friday abstinence, but he was going to Catholic school and he was taught about Friday abstinence. And so he came home, and I'm not even sure, I don't remember the story well enough if he was even Catholic, if the boy was Catholic. I think he was. I think he and his mother were Catholic, but the father wasn't, so the family never observed Friday abstinence. Anyway, he comes home from school, and he just said that he couldn't have the meat that was prepared for dinner because he said it's Friday, and I'm Catholic, and so I'm not allowed to have meat on Friday. And the father was furious. He said, you will eat this. You're going to eat this. And he said, I can't, Dad. Sorry. And so the dad was so angry with him, he sent him to his room, then you will have nothing to eat. And he sent him to his room without any food at all. So the boy's in his room, and Mom comes in a little bit later, and she's sneaking him some food that has no meat in it. And the boy said to his mother, I can't have that either, because that would be disobeying my dad.